There we go. It took me a few seconds to get the camera up and running, but good evening, everybody out in IFL Nation, and welcome back to the lab, your weekly source for all things IFL, from recaps of last week's games, predictions of the games that are to come, and all the other goings on of this great league. You've come to the right place for your data download in the Indoor Football League. We are just a couple hours away from tonight's Friday evening kickoffs, but no time like the present to announce that it is Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much again for tuning in, taking some time from your evening. Maybe you're doing something in preparation for the games. Who knows? But in any event, very glad that you're here. For those of you who are new to the Indoor Football League or to this channel, welcome aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game, a passion that I have put together and which has led me to my current role as the lead IFL contributor for a sports forum site called Sports Coast to Coast. They are a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14 member teams. From team-by-team up-to-date rosters to game previews, game recaps, and a whole host of another analysis. If you call yourself a fan of the Indoor Football League, Sports Coast to Coast is a must-have resource to enhance your fandom, whether you like the league as a whole or just one of the teams. There's something there for any fan to take in, get value out of, and we say on the show, it's all about value. On the forum as well, you will find the written version of today's video post. So that is something to keep an eye out for as well. And as we gear up to put our presentation up, it is up. Welcome to week 11. Granted, we've already had it start with yesterday's game, which we will spend some time talking about as well. A significant game in that it is the 56th game of the regular season. So we are officially halfway through the 112 game regular season slate. So perhaps in some wacky way, it's fitting that this video got delayed until now. So without further ado, let's get to our weekly preview here. So we'll start off by going over week 10, which, spoiler alert, does feature a backdoor cover that we were on the wrong side of. But we had games where multiple halftime deficits faded into the wind. We had a good old-fashioned beatdown in pretty much 4 of the 5 games on that schedule, coming down to the final snap, the final whistle. There was something for every fan of the league to take part in. We'll break all those games down in detail, plus yesterday's matchup between the Jacksonville Sharks and the Massachusetts Pirates. We'll see how those games add to the season-long tracker, which has some new features this week that weren't in last week's version. So definitely stick around and check those out. Once we have all of our recaps and our other betting-related analysis done, we will pave ahead for week 11. So we had the game on Thursday, but we still have the 2 tonight and the 3 tomorrow night. We will discuss the 3-leg parlay attempt, which, spoiler alert, did wind up losing. I had posted about that on this channel yesterday, so check that video out if you haven't already. There was some good picks in there and some bad picks, but I will leave it to you to go check that out and see how I did. All righty, here are the week 10 results along with the week 11 of Thursday Night Football highlighted in the bottom from yesterday's game. But we will begin things here with the Tulsa Oilers and Iowa Barnstormers. Very interesting battle out in Des Moines. These two teams went to battle either 2 or 3 weeks ago and offered an insane ending to that game, where the Barnstormers were down by 31 points in the fourth quarter, staged a manic comeback, nearly won, but ended up on the losing side by 5 points. This game between Tulsa and Iowa was no exception to that rule. We had another insane finish that saw the Oilers up by, or not the Oilers, the Barnstormers were up by 18 points with about 3 minutes to go in the game. They had just scored a touchdown to increase that lead, and I can't blame you if you tuned out of that game. But for those who didn't learn the lesson the last time, surprise, we had a crazy ending to the game. We had a quick score by Tulsa, an onside kick recovery, another quick score. Within that span, there were too many unsportsmanlike penalties and ejections handed out. It was just a crazy, frenetic finish. All of a sudden, with about a minute to go, an 18-point Barnstormer lead was cut down to 2. And with an opportunity to advance the ball down the field, seal the win, Iowa goes for the jugular. They toss into the end zone. The pass is short, gets intercepted. And with 1 second remaining on that Tulsa drive, TJ Edwards makes some plays, evades pressure, and ultimately finds linebacker / defensive back Trey Harvey for what would stand as the go-ahead touchdown. Crazy finish besides that as well. Tulsa nearly actually got this spread to cover. They were 7.5-point favorites. Nearly had a touchdown on the final kickoff of the game, but that got called back due to penalty, which meant that the Barnstormers actually had an untimed down to try to steal the win away, but another end zone pass ended up being intercepted. So with a 23-0 run in the final 150 seconds of that game, the Oilers extend their win streak to 5. They take down Iowa 56-51, margin that easily made it by the over at 87.5. So now Iowa Barnstormers games 7-1 to the over. That is tops amongst teams in the Indoor Football League. We had another game between the Jacksonville Sharks and the Fishers Freight. Fishers, a team that was trying to snap a 5-game losing streak. The Sharks trying to push their winning streak at the time up to 3 games. And it looked like this one early on that Fishers might have actually been able to pull it out. They led by 14 at half. And that's when Jacksonville made an interesting change at the quarterback position. They had started Blaine Espinoza. They went to Tyler Huff because Caleb Barker was inactive for this game, and Huff was crazily impressive, finishing off runs like a skill position player, running back, wide receiver. He had a tremendous game, particularly on the ground, though he was equally as effective with his arm in the passing game as well. It was an individual effort that basically galvanized Jacksonville's defense on the other side. And what we ended up seeing was a 23-0 Jacksonville run to start the second half that ended up putting them ahead by 9 points. So all they had to do was play even ball with Fishers from that point on, and we were looking in reasonably solid shape. This game's bet result was defined on the final possession of the game, with the Sharks up by 10 points, just needed a stand or a takeaway. But 2 plays into the Freight drive, Jaya Wright finds Shavarez Smith for a 30-yard touchdown that proved to be the backdoor cover. The Freight losing by 4 versus the Freight losing by 10 turned out to be all the difference in the world for us. So with this result, the Sharks get the win 46-40 over the Fishers Freight. We barely miss out on the cover by 3 points. And we will get to that 5-5 spread betting record in a minute on the favorites, because that is notable with extra little bit of context thrown in. But in continuing on with our game recaps here, Bay Area at San Antonio. This game started off very, very close. The Gunslingers and Panthers were pretty much trading blow for blow. This was 20-19 late in the first half. And that's when Bay Area decided to make their charge. They got a touchdown in the dying seconds of the first half that put them up by 8. That play would be the Kickstarter of a 27-0 Panther run where, as the name suggests, they basically ran away with this game. They forced 4 San Antonio turnovers in the second half alone, pretty much stalling any hope that the Gunslingers had of pulling off a crazy upset. So for Bay Area, they continue to pounce on opposition. This matchup at Freedman Coliseum, no different. They win 55-26. They get to 6-2, and San Antonio drops to 2-6. Our money line pick on the favorites cashes with ease. And our other matchup on Saturday night was the Rattlers at Northern Arizona, Arizona in-state rivalry, for which we had the over at 82.5. And both offenses, they did okay in the first half. There was really a limited number of possessions to go around, but the teams remained efficient nonetheless. What really got the momentum of this pick moving forward was a kick return touchdown by David Elder of the Wranglers as time expired, giving us 7 additional points before the break. What would have probably been a 27-13 game quickly became a 27-20 affair. And the Wranglers, they've been playing with the chip on their shoulder basically since they got Ramon Atkins back. And it very much looked like they could have pulled off this upset against the Rattlers. They were tied at 40-all late in the fourth quarter. They get a touchdown from Nolan Susil, which actually cashed the over for us. First time all season that a Northern Arizona game has gone over, by the way. But ultimately with this one, Arizona proving once again their championship medal. They stare down that 7-point deficit in the face and were not intimidated by it. They score a game-winning touchdown, or game-tying touchdown, I should say. Get a defensive stand late. Score the game-winning touchdown with another Snead to Houston connection in the end zone. That was with about 20 seconds to go in the game. The Wranglers, in an attempt to possibly tie or win the game themselves, ended up going incomplete on 4th down, right when zeros hit the clock to put an end to the game. Arizona goes to 7-1 with the 54-47 victory. This was another over bet that we made that cashed with plenty of margin to spare. So the Rattlers go to 7-1. The Wranglers fall to 1-7. Our final game of Week 10 was on a Sunday, Vegas at San Diego. This was where we went a little bit bold. We took the Strike Force on the money line as the home dog. And fast forwarding to the last 4 minutes of this game, I will openly say that winning this bet was pure luck. So Vegas was up by 4. The Strike Force were reduced to Rudy Johnson at quarterback because Nate Davis was injured late in the first half of the game. And really, there were 4 defining points where this bet could have went against us. The first was on an early 4th down where Johnson scrambled for a first down but fumbled. But Dallas Daniels was right in the midst of 3-4 Nighthawk defenders where the ball just bounced to him. He recovers to keep the possession alive. The second play was another 4th down. It was actually a 4th and 10 where Johnson completed a pass across his body to Journey Sloan. Sloan was very, very close. Was the knee down before he made the line to gain? Your call there, but the officials ruled it a first down, and after review, they were able to uphold the call. The third play was another 4th down where Vegas ended up being penalized for an illegal defense, extending the Strike Force drive even more. And then the 4th play, that defined it. Rudy Johnson's 1-yard touchdown run where it wasn't abundantly clear whether or not he crossed the goal line, but the ruling on the field was a touchdown. So they had to find overwhelming evidence with the angles that they had to overturn. They could not. And so it is San Diego ripping another win away from the Vegas Nighthawks, taking the season series 2-1. They get to even with the Nighthawks at 4-4, thanks to the 42-39 win. So that was the path that Week 10 brought us, en route to a 4-1 record. And then yesterday's game between the Sharks and the Pirates, we had the under at 79.5, and trusting the 4-0 under streak that this matchup had boasted since the two teams became IFL rivals last season. And we got precisely that. The game was very, very close, actually. This was another razor-thin margin type of game where the Pirates were up 43-29 and had possession of the ball. There was one play that they had. They just needed positive yardage, but Puka Williams nearly ran it in for a touchdown. You could see in the replay he stopped himself short, somehow stayed in bounds, and that was one of the plays that helped the Pirates run out the clock before any other scoring could take place. This one turns out to be an upset. The Pirates saved their season once again with the win over the Sharks, the second time this season that they have done so. This game ended 43-29 in favor of Massachusetts, and that is how we kick off Week 11 of the season. So I had mentioned during the Jacksonville Fishers recap, I want to look at that 5-5 record betting favorites on the spread, which doesn't look all that special. But consider 3 of those losses have been because the underdog scored a touchdown deep in garbage time to make their margin of defeat less than the spread. So we had this situation happen, obviously, with Fishers last week, but we also had it happen with Iowa in Week 2 against Green Bay and San Antonio in Week 4 when they ended up with a pretty close margin against the Arizona Rattlers. Both of those previous backdoor covers made us lose by the hook. The Fishers Freight backdoor cover meant that we lost by 3 points. Still heartbreaking nonetheless, but turn one or two more of those into more conventional losses where the underdog happens not to get those plays. That spread betting record probably looks drastically different than it does now. But we're still above 500 overall in betting on the spread, as well as a convincing 67% win rate on our over-unders. That does include Jacksonville and Massachusetts from yesterday. So at 31-25, halfway through the regular season, that's pretty darn good. Our parlay of the week, we had kind of mentioned this at the beginning. We took the Sharks on the money line minus 265, and we failed. I just don't know what exactly it is with underdogs and Pirates games this season, because the underdog record straight up and against the spread is an absurd 7-1 going both ways. So maybe that's something that we can tap into for next week's Massachusetts Pirates game. But for right now, what we're left with is a broken parlay attempt, third consecutive week where we pretty much had our hopes stopped before they could even start. So unfortunate sequence there, but that is what it is. Hopefully we can get the other 2 legs of the parlay of the hit just for posterity. But there's going to be no parlay payout for Week 11, which will extend our drought to 5 weeks without a parlay win. So last week was obviously super good. It gets us back to a positive result for our flat method of betting. The weighted method is still struggling along below, mainly due to our 0 for 7 streak on betting favorites on the money line to start the season. But we're getting progressively up there. There may come a time where both of these wind up getting equal again. But we will have to see if that happens when that convergence ends up taking place. In the past 4 weeks, by the way, we are sporting a record of 15-9. That is good for a 60% hit rate, or 62.5, I should say, which is pretty darn ridiculous. for that stretch of time. So we are blazing right along. And our ROI percentage by method is there as well. The flat method getting above the 0% line, trending closer to that 5% mark, which was our preseason goal, which we raised up from the surface last week. So anything above that green line, once everything is all said and done, will qualify as a success in terms of accomplishing that goal. So here are our yearly results by bet type, segmented out towards favorites and underdogs, overs and unders, and things of that nature. Again, this does include yesterday's game. And one of the notable ones right there is that the spread betting records are dead even. Favorites have covered 28, underdogs have covered 28. So that makes it a scary proposition in a general sense for your typical bettor. Because if you're winning half of your bets, that's okay. But the end game is that because of the vigorish, the 10% juice that these bets have inherently built in them, a 50% betting record is not going to cut it if you want to turn a profit. So that's scary thing number one about that. Scary thing number two about that is that nearly half of the teams in the entire league are either dead even, 4-4 against the spread, or they're one game off from it. In the case of Tucson, they are 4-3, as one of just three teams that are purely above 500 against the spread. And then you have Jacksonville at 4-5 against the spread as well. From their failure to cover, or win for that matter, in their game against Massachusetts. Where the value really lies right now is with home teams, betting in a general sense. Whether you're like teams to outright win or for that home team to cover, it has been an insanely good bet to take. Since week 6, both straight up and against the spread, home teams 22-9. That is better than a 70% hit rate. So if you're looking for something quick, as far as, hey, let's try to get this win, look no further than home teams. Because they've been balling out here over the past month plus. Nearly 59% on the spread and nearly 61% grabbing the outright win. And with yesterday's result, unders are 55.4% effective, with a pretty significant edge when that total is set 82.5 or greater. Another thing that's pretty ridiculous when I looked at this is that if you look at the 25 overs on the season, nearly 80% of those overs are made up by just 3 teams. Iowa, Fishers, and Arizona games combining for 19 of those 25. It's actually 76% of all league-wide overs accounted for by just 3 teams. So pretty crazy to think about there. And it gets you thinking, if any of those 2 teams get put together toe-to-toe, might that point total get close to or exceed 100? Closest that we've come this year is 92.5. So that'll be something interesting to look out for later on in the season. So here are our team-by-team trends. There are no more perfect results remaining on the season, but there still are some statistically significant ones out there, highlighted in either green or red for your reference. The additional column that I've put over on the right is just a notable trend from stuff that I looked at earlier this week, figuring out, hey, are there any notable streaks that have happened in games involving the specified team? One of the ones that perhaps should have caught my eye a little bit more was Jacksonville and Massachusetts, which, including the result of last night's game, the home team was covered in 5 straight Sharks games, and for the Pirates, the underdog 7-1 straight up and against the spread, like we said. Some other notable ones out there that could apply for this week's games. Fisher's games have gone 6 straight to the over, while the Freight have lost 6 in a row outright. Sugar Skulls, the home team, is 6-1 against the spread. San Antonio is 5-1 to the under when set at 80 or more points. Those are just a few of the examples. If you dig into this data deep enough, you'll be bound to find something where you kind of have to take a double take and say, wait a minute, is that actually right? That's one of my favorite things about this is you always find something new every time that you look at this. So I find a real thrill out of it. And here are our bet results by team, again accounting for yesterday's result. And you can see I've added another column over here as well, indicating the amount of money that we've gained or lost from games involving the specified team. The team that we are struggling with the most, the San Antonio Gunslingers, nearly offsetting all of our success with Northern Arizona Wranglers games so far. But we have made pretty much close to 3 units on 4 or 5 of these teams. So the teams that we're still struggling along with either 2 or 3 betting wins so far, we'll definitely want to prop those up while keeping our record strong on the teams that we're already successful with. So before we go into our picks, it is time for our weekly disclaimer. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. This series is something that I do purely for fun, for entertainment, and for the thrill. It's not meant to be a money-making tool in any capacity. Even though statistics are pretty powerful and can tell a pretty convincing story, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a lock or a guarantee in the sports wagering world. That said, if you do decide to tail or fade my bets, you're more than welcome to do so, but please gamble responsibly. You must be 21 or older to play in most jurisdictions. Highly recommend practicing safe gaming habits that include setting a budget both time and money-wise. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you or a loved one is having issues with problem gaming or feel like you're teetering on that state, there's lots of resources online that you can refer to for help in that matter. Haveagameplan.org is one. Responsibleplay.org is another. All fantastic resources to anyone seeking assistance with problem gaming, problem gambling, things of that nature. And with that said, it is finally time, almost a half hour into the show, to come up with some winning picks. Let's mosey on over to this big board. And we will go down the list here. At this point, we are about 90 minutes from kickoff of both of tonight's games. We will start our analysis tonight with the Quad City Steamwheelers at the Tulsa Oilers. This is a rematch from 2 weeks ago when the two teams battled it out at Vibrant Arena in Moline. This is a pick'em. The over-under is set at 82.5, and both teams laying a dime on that money line. This one should be a lot of fun, and very similar to Jacksonville and Massachusetts yesterday, there is a question to be answered at the quarterback position, particularly with Quad City. They've had Daquan Neal out for each of the last 2 games. They had a bye last week. Is that enough to get him fully healthy and ready to rock for this Eastern Conference showdown? Which, by the way, the winner will take single hold of first place in the Eastern Conference. So that's a big question. Is Neal going to be healthy? If he is he going to start? Because earlier this week, the Steamwheelers did make a signing at quarterback, which suggests that one or both of Neal or Demery Croft might still be dealing with injury. So there is that bit of uncertainty as well. Meanwhile, for Tulsa, they are just firing right now. They've won 5 straight games. They showed a little bit of vulnerability in that Iowa game, but to their credit, they caught Iowa kind of napping in the last few minutes of that game. They steal the win. They keep the streak alive, and now they go back home where they're 3-0 on the season with wins by 14, 16, and 5 points, with that 5-point win obviously being that Iowa shenanigans one where the lead got up as high as 31. So no doubt about it, the Oilers at their best can play anybody well in this building, with the tens of thousands of fans packing that arena week in and week out. Whenever the Oilers play at home, they are sure to have a home turf advantage. And the numbers back this up too. We've had 3 pick'em games on the season. We've had Tulsa at Fishers, we've had Bay Area at Arizona, and we've had Green Bay at Tulsa. All 3 of those games were won by the home team, and I am backing that to continue here. This also has a lot to do with the fact that you can lean upon the fact of, hey, this game involves TJ Edwards. He's lost maybe 8 regular season games in the last 3 years combined. And now we can back his team at minus 110. Looking at the math from that angle, this seems pretty ridiculous. But the other side of the coin here is that if there's any defense that has proven an ability to give Edwards a little bit of problems, it would be Quad City, right around the top 3 unit in defensive efficiency and defensive scoring allowed per game. So there's a lot of really good picks here. You could go with anyone and make a reasonable case for it. I just see the most value with backing the Tulsa Oilers. But that will probably be the highlight game of tonight. All righty, the other 8:05 game, that's Eastern time. Fishers at Green Bay. The Freight going in with the league's longest losing streak at 6 games. They're getting 9 in the hook with the over-under set at 90.5. On the money line, Fishers plus 295 and Green Bay minus 375. The Freight obviously coming off that tough loss on Saturday when they had a 14-point halftime lead but couldn't bring it home. The Blizzard last week were on a bye, but have made a couple of really good additions to the roster. Pretty much offense, defense, and special teams across the board. Jazaric Peterson at wide receiver, Rafiq Abdul-Wahid along the defensive line, and bringing back Andrew Mevis from his brief stint in the Canadian Football League to replace James Turner, who had done an admirable job holding the fort for a couple weeks. The stat that I looked at with this game was both teams' relative struggles on the defensive side of the football. Green Bay has been a lot better as far as the eye test goes in their past few games. But this is still a unit that's still giving up about 46 points per game entering this one. The Freight, with their strong running game at its best, can certainly attack it. And we'll fully expect Jaya Wright to start this one for Fishers after Keegan Shoemaker was placed on short-term IR after suffering a scary-looking injury in the fourth quarter of last week's Jacksonville game. So you have him. You got Shane Simpson in that backfield too. You can get super creative with guys like JT Stokes as well in that department. I just think there's going to be a decent helping of points scored in this game. And for that reason, I'm taking the over, even at this relatively high number. It's very weird how this number at 90.5 wasn't really much of a thought last year, but we haven't had many games set this high this year. But I'm not intimidated by this total at all for really a couple of reasons. Number one, Fishers plays with a very, very high level of tempo. They're able to generate about 11.5 possessions on a per game basis. That is second in the IFL only to Iowa. That is a trend that has been very conducive to their stretch that we mentioned earlier, where they've gone 6 consecutive games cashing the over. And prior to last week's loss, they had given up 50 or more points in each of their 5 prior losses to last week. And that's something that Green Bay will look to add to that trend. A team that is second in the IFL in points per game, obviously adding that Joker's Wild in Peterson to that rotation that they can throw out there on offense. If things go the offense's way and defense turns out to be optional, both teams could get to 50 here. We'll have to see how it goes, but this is a game that I feel is ripe for the over to hit, even at this lofty number at 90.5. Our Saturday slate has 3 9:05 p.m. kickoffs. We'll start off with the San Antonio Gunslingers and Tucson Sugar Skulls. The Skulls back home laying 4.5. The over/under 79 in the hook. On the money line, San Antonio plus 150. Tucson minus 180. For the Gunslingers, this is really a do or die type of game. Not a lot has gone right for them this season. They do have a couple wins to their name. But some of these games that they've lost, they have not been able to crack even the 30-point threshold. Offense has just been a struggle. The departure of Sam Casanova has left a serious void at that position, one that the Gunslingers have tried to fill with what seems like 4 or 5 different guys. Right now, they have Joaquin Collazo, who has some pretty good upside in terms of explosive plays, but also a lot of risk when it comes to turnovers, which became a huge problem in the second half of the Bay Area game, where they coughed up the ball on 4 of their 5 or 6 drives in that 30-minute stretch. And this is not a good matchup in Tucson, where defenses have just ruled the day, particularly the Sugar Skull side of things, where I think the Skulls in their 3 or 4 home games so far have given up an average just above 30 points per game. So this is not an easy matchup for any team, as we've seen, but San Antonio is really up against it. And a startling stat when I did my search was that if you go back to the beginning of play last season, we've had 11 games played in this building. 10 of them have hit the under. And a lot of it goes down to just to that overall feel of playing in Tucson, where offenses have just been stalled for the most part. So I am returning to this well here. I am taking the under at 79.5. And listen, the last time that we took a Tucson under, we got burned. But that's the reality of sports bets. Like, even if something is like 80% accurate, your Angel Reese double bets are going to miss every once in a while. Your Derrick Henry anytime touchdown streak, probably going to have to come to a close eventually. Scotty Scheffler top 20s are going to miss once in a blue moon. That's just the reality of the fact. But I am not scared by this at all. Tucson is certainly capable of holding San Antonio under 30 points, which I think is all that we're going to need. The big scare here, does Tucson's offense with Jorge Reyna and Trip Harrington and Devontae Sapp-Lynch do too much? It's very possible. But I feel like another advantageous look at this bet is that San Antonio, for the struggles that they've had, have done a very good job of limiting the number of possessions that teams have on a per game basis. They are, I think, bottom 2 in possessions had per game with about 9.5. So if they play to that and Tucson obliges to that sort of game flow, 79.5 seems reasonably good. So that is my pick for that game. A result that would put Tucson unders at 14-2 in their last 16, cashing the under. Pretty ridiculous stuff. All right, primetime Western Conference matchup, Arizona at Vegas. We have the Rattlers laying exactly a field goal's worth of points, posing the possibility of a push there. The over-under is 92.5, which is exactly what it was the last time these two teams played each other a couple weeks ago. The money line is set at Arizona minus 148, Vegas plus 124. And what we have here is another game where the narrative heading in is that question at quarterback. In this case, for the Vegas Nighthawks, because Jerome Johnson did get hurt in the second half of the San Diego game on Sunday, which in there also forces Johnson to have one fewer day, relatively speaking, to recover in the lead up to this game. So is he healthy enough to play? Or is this a spot where the Nighthawks rely on Jaden DeLaura to come in and deliver a solid effort? So we'll have to see what happens there. I didn't see the Nighthawks make any significant moves at quarterback to suggest that Johnson won't play. But given the form that Johnson showed in his past 2-3 ball games, if he's anything except for 100%, it might make a lot of sense to push Jaden DeLaura for a game to ensure that Johnson is healthy for the more important stretch of the season. But in any event, this is going to be a great game. Vegas played amazing in the matchup 2 weeks ago, but just couldn't finish it out. They had a 12-point lead late, an Arizona touchdown, plus an onside kick recovery, plus another Arizona touchdown, kind of stole a win away from them. And as for Arizona, their margins of victory the past few games haven't been the most convincing in the world. Just 5 points against Bay Area, 3 points against Vegas, 7 points against Northern Arizona. They've gone with more of the elite teams find ways to win route, which raises two questions. How often can you play with fire in those types of close games? And on Vegas' side, is that a narrative that you can tap back into to snap this 2-game skid where, honestly, they could very well easily be 6-2 right now if they had made some closing plays defensively? Maybe got some bounces to go their way. This pick will attempt to be probably the most entertaining as far as possible result. The only time Arizona has lost this season is when I have picked them to win outright. Arizona at minus 148 on the money line. Relatively speaking, when it comes to Arizona and picking their chances to win, it's going to be tough to get much better odds than this for a Rattlers outright win. A team that is a league best 7-1 right now at these odds is too tantalizing to pass up. And given Vegas' state of affairs with injuries, roster transactions, they could very well bounce back here, but I would definitely say the cards are stacked against them to do so. So that is my play. We'll see if Arizona can get to 8-1 and cash a money line bet for us, or if both of our Arizona money line picks wind up being losses, which would be crazy, by the way. If you take the math there, the chances of picking both Arizona games to lose, whereas every other game of theirs has been a win, basically a 2-3% chance of happening. So we'll go for some more of the notorious stats with our pick there. So Arizona minus 148. And out in San Diego, we get another rematch from a few weeks ago and the same venue to boot, when the Northern Arizona Wranglers take on the Strike Force. The Wranglers are getting 6 in the hook with the over-under 81.5. Northern Arizona's plus 180 money line and San Diego's minus 218. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A lot of the line of thinking here depends on health at quarterback. Nate Davis, one of the few quarterbacks of Week 10 to get injured during his team's win against Vegas last week, which forced Rudy Johnson into action and a sudden shift in offensive philosophy that followed. So if Nate Davis were to miss any time, it would fall upon either Johnson or maybe an external signing to hold the reins until he's ready to come back. So again, this is a very tough spot for them timing-wise against a Northern Arizona team that on paper, San Diego should be able to get this job done. But in looking closer at Northern Arizona's recent form, there's a lot to like here. Like, even in the 2 recent games without Ramon Atkins in the lineup, they were doing a lot of things right. And one of the things that I gravitated to was, in the past 4 games, the Wranglers are 3-1 against the spread. That only loss was 3 weeks ago in this building, where they missed covering by the hook. Don't let that 1-7 record deceive you. This is a brand new Northern Arizona team that should not be taken lightly in any capacity. So, at least for this week, I'm a believer. I'm a believer in this Northern Arizona plus 6.5 wager with a very solid shot of a Wrangler outright win. They'll obviously need to continue some of the strong habits that they have been doing, notably with offensive efficiency and taking care of the ball. And they'll also need to continue their defensive tenacity against San Diego, a team that has been prone to turning the ball over, and something that Northern Arizona did capitalize on a couple of different times in these teams' previous meetings. And one thing, as we've learned this season on a few different occasions, the difference between 6.5 and 7.5 for an underdog spread isn't actually as prohibitive as you would initially think. One aspect for me that really helped me come to that realization is the reality of games possibly going to overtime. If we do get that result here, most of the time, the margin of victory is somewhere inside of 6 points, which is really what this wager comes down to. If we can get a close game where Northern Arizona can go wire to wire and hang with the strike force the whole way through, this will turn up to be a pretty smart bet. So that is one of my bolder picks of this week, but one that I feel like Northern Arizona is playing reasonably hot right now compared to expectations. I could very well see a repeat effort here. So Northern Arizona getting 6.5, covering with an outright win very much in play. All right, so that is going to do it for my single game bets. Obviously, my 3-leg parlay lost with the Sharks losing at the hands of the Pirates in Louisville last night. So instead of leaving this section out, I figured let's have a little bit of fun with this. So if you are a believer that we can take our Week 11 record from 1-0 to 6-0, we can attempt to put all 5 of those legs that we had mentioned into a parlay where that streak, assuming all 5 bets hit, we get over 21-1 for that possible payout. The ultimate display of faith here, the crazy roll of the dice, if we put $10 on this, we would get over $220 if this thing were to cash. What a dream sequence this would be if we could get this to go. Across the 6-game slate, I think it was week 8, we went 5-1. So, and last week we went 4-1. So a few things go our way here with a little bit of luck. Who knows? Maybe this thing actually does cash. So a fun little parlay. Basically saying that we will go a perfect 6-0 this week, excluding last week's game where that kind of prompted this plan B. Plus 21.25. So tail it, fade it, ignore it, do whatever you want to do with it. But I feel like that was pretty interesting little aside there. Alrighty, so with all of those in the books, still no futures bets. That is going to be a wrap for tonight's episode of Wager Wednesday. Don't forget that we have 2 games kicking off in just over an hour. We've got Fishers at Green Bay. We've got Quad City at Tulsa. Both of those games can be viewed on the IFL network. I also have the URL for that in the description. So if you haven't already created an account, definitely recommend doing so. It comes with a 7-day free trial to see if you like the product. If so, great. If not, you can always back out, no charge to you. So that is how you'll be able to watch games live if you want to sweat them out. If you are betting this week on the games, I wish you the very best of luck. Enjoy tonight's games. Enjoy tomorrow's games. I will see you at the cashier.